Good evening, folks. How you all doing today? Today I'm going to be smoking my new Rossi 8311, I believe it is, with some Star of the East in it. First smoke out of the pipe, so let's get it lit. Thank you, Greg. So, today I've been throwing around a couple different topics. Try to talk about. I think I'm going to talk about the interesting people we come across in life. This is inspired by Mike over at Old Man Things. He talked about interesting people he's met on flights. Now, for me, most of the interesting people I've ever met on flights are not many. The coolest one was I got sat next to an Indiana State representative on a flight from CVG, the Greater Cincinnati Airport, to Florida. Had no clue who he was. He was on the plane. He had like a dozen family members with him. They were going on vacation. They had someplace down in Florida they were heading. And I got on the plane. I had an aisle seat, so I slapped in some earbuds. Had MP3s playing for the first 10 minutes of the flight or so. And this guy sitting next to me just rambling away talking. I had no idea he was talking to me. Then he asked a question. And I pulled the earbuds out. I was like, "You talking to me?" He's like, "Yeah, what are you doing? Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to Florida like you are. What are you doing down there?" And I was going down there to help a friend move his stuff back up here. They had sold their property. And after that, the pleasantries were out of the way. The initial, how you doing, who are you, where are you from. He told me who he was, and then he went into his political speech, trying to get a new voter type thing. I tried to explain to him, I'm not even in his district. He just kept going, and that went on for about 30-ish minutes. I wasn't interested in anything he had to say. It wasn't in my district. I couldn't vote on him if I wanted to. But after that, we got past that. And then he started talking about his family business, which was a hardware store, a local hardware store in a town that I visited frequently. And I've been in his family for a while. We talked about that, and we talked about growing up in the area. I may have not lived there, and I still don't live in his district to this day, but my grandmother did. So I spent a lot of time down there. So we talked about local things that we both had encountered growing up down there. And he was 10 or so years older than I was, so he had slightly different experiences than I did, just due to the time frame. But as a whole, turns out there were a few people that we'd crossed paths with, or we knew that we both knew. It was an okay flight. He was a little boring, but nice guy nonetheless. And I assume that his boringness wasn't actually that he was boring at all. It just that he didn't want to say anything that could shine a bad light on his reputation because he's a politician. Normal guy, you say, "Hey, went out and partied with my friends, got a little drunk, lit a couch on fire in the backyard, had a good time." That's the kind of stuff that would shine badly on a lot of people. But you know how that goes. But here's not the topic of this video. So, growing up, I would go to work with my dad on weekends and in the summer. He was a flooring layer. And we would end up in all kinds of crazy places. Schools, courthouses, you name it. We might be there. Government facilities, any possible place you could think of. Any place that needs new floors. Well, there was a guy that they would always stick with Dad because they got along. Dude's name was Bob, and everybody called him Crazy Bob. And you'll understand why by the time this video is done, why he was referred to as Crazy Bob. So, the first time I ever met Bob, Dad gives me a warning. He's like, don't talk back to Bob. Don't get in Bob's face. Don't be a dick to Bob. You know, all these things. And I was like, who's Bob? Dad gives me the rundown real fast. Vietnam vet. He's off his meds. He's a little loony. He's a nice guy as long as you don't be a dick. Okay. I'm like, cool. I can handle that. Walk in. First time I ever met Bob, I'm 13, 14 maybe. Bob gets up in my face. Who are you? And he's a big boy. 400 pounds, 6'3", big boy. And he looks like he belonged in a biker movie. All gnarly. Big guy. Gets up in my face. Who are you? I'm like, I'm Rich Boy. Why are you here? Well, I'm here to work. Make a few dollars. Don't get in my way. I was like, whatever. I have no intent of getting in your way. Well, I go on about my business. At this age, my predominant job is cleanup and sanding floors. Now, you ever seen them great big floor buffers that they have in every movie? It's got the big round disc on it and they swing it back and forth. That's the same thing you use to sand floors. Except for they replaced the buffing pad, it looks like a mop, with a giant piece of sandpaper. Extremely coarse. And you use it to sand concrete predominantly. I have used them to sand wood floors that they were putting carpet over, but that's a residential situation and that's an entirely different game. Most of what my dad did at this point was non-residential. It was commercial. So, I'm sitting here, I'm sanding the floor, and it's a big warehouse. It is a very big warehouse, and I've got to sand the entire floor because they're going to level it. And then they're going to put tile on it. I don't know why they were putting tile in a warehouse, but they were. I think it was tile. Might have been that rubber from that flooring. Whatever. Anyway, I'm sanding. I'm about halfway across the floor. I've been going at it for 3-ish hours. And all of a sudden, the sander dies. I'm sitting there shaking it, flipping the levers. I lean it up, lean it back. I'm start bitching and moaning. What the hell's wrong with this thing? And all of a sudden I hear cackling coming from across the room. Bob unplugged it from the wall. And he was over there laughing about me trying to figure out why it wouldn't go. Because I checked the fuse on it, and it had a breaker fuse style set up on the side of it. I went through everything, except for going to check to see if it was plugged in. Because I had more than enough cord to get 3/4 of the way across the warehouse floor. I hear him cackling over there, and it's like, Bob, what the hell you think you're doing? He's like, I come to tell you it's time for lunch, and I didn't feel like walking that far. All right, cool. So, I go over where we're going to do lunch, which is right by the main entrance. And we brought our own dinner. Bob pops outside. He's gone for 10 minutes. He comes back in. You can smell him. He smell weed. I look at Dad, and Dad's like, don't worry about it. All right. Bob pulls out his dinner bucket. This is one of those big dinner buckets. And he pulls out a roll of salami and a block of cheese and a 6-pack of beer. All right, Dad. Dad just shakes his head. And at that point, Bob starts cutting cheese and salami and going to town, and he cracks a beer, slams one. Like, Bob, you think you should be drinking at work? He's like, there ain't nobody here to tell me otherwise. I was like, all right. Nobody gonna tell you what to do. I get you. Well, he drinks the whole 6-pack of beer in about 30 minutes. Whole thing gone. He goes on back to work. We go on back to work. We have break time. A couple hours later, me and Dad sit down and have some pretzels. Cold beverage. Mountain Dew, I believe it was that day. Mostly Mountain Dew most days. It's even Mountain Dew right now, except for this is a zero variety. Anyway. We go to have break. Bob, he's gone again. We do the whole break. It's only 15 minutes. Dad's like, go get Bob. I was like, where's he going to be? He's like, he'll be outside sitting in his car. I walk outside. In the parking lot, there are 2 vehicles. My dad's pickup truck and Bob's Cadillac. A nice, shiny, fairly new Cadillac. I go, all right. So I walk over and knock on the door or the window. He rolls the window down about this far, and smoke just comes billowing out, and you can smell it. I'm like, Bob, break time's over. We need to get back to it. He's like, it's already over? 15 minutes? It's like, yeah, Bob. Time to go. Okay. So he gets out of the car. And he swats me on the back as we're walking to the building. He about knocks me off my feet. I'm like, Bob, you okay? He's like, I like you. I'm like, okay. You should be alright too, Bob. He's like, if you weren't Rick's boy, I'd probably hate you. I'm like, okay, Bob. So we go back in. We finish the day out. We were going to leave, and we got to pack everything up. And I start talking to Bob. I'm a kid, so I start up pestering Bob, asking him questions. You know, where are you from? What do you do? You know, he's from the greater Cincinnati area. This, that, and the other. And he goes through all this, and I was like, so how'd you end up in Florida? He's like, well, when I left Vietnam, I didn't have nothing to do, and a friend of mine said his dad needed help. And I've been doing it ever since. Really straightforward. So now I've learned that Bob's a Vietnam vet. Well, I asked him about his car. I was like, that's a nice car. When'd you get it? And he's like, it's about 2 years old. It's time for another one. I was like, you sure about that, Bob? It's a nice car. They're like, I get a new one every 3 years. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Well, day is over. Going about our business. We go home. Bob goes on his way. So, about 3 weeks later, I hadn't been to work with Dad because the places they were working I shouldn't be at this point. And Bob would keep asking my dad, where have I been? Why haven't I been helping? You know, that kind of stuff. Dad comes in, he tells me this. He's like, I don't know. Bob seems to think you're all right. He wants to know where you've been and why you ain't working. I think this is funny, and I don't pay no never mind to it at that point. But over the course of the next 2 years until I get of age where I can work everywhere. You know, because once you're 16, you can work just about everywhere except for casinos and certain places. You know, which then you need to be 18 or 21. You know, there's certain businesses you can't be in, but they never did those types of businesses typically. But anyway, for the next couple of years, I worked with Dad and Bob on the weekends. Here and there. And me and Bob slowly become better buddies and better buddies. And turns out that Bob, Vietnam vet, he'd run 2 tours. He was a Golden Glove boxer. Maybe it was 3 tours. I don't remember. And I never did figure out why they really called Bob crazy, because I was only working with him part-time. Well, at this point, I'm going to work with him at places like schools and government facilities, like courthouses in particular, is the one we did a lot of. But on a Saturday morning, we show up at a school. I believe it was in Kentucky, but I can't swear to it. It might have been Cincinnati area. And Bob is sitting outside on the playground. They're just remodeling this school. This is not a brand new school or anything. Playground's there. And Bob is sitting outside on the swing in the playground smoking a doob. Just sitting there chooching away in public. There's buildings, houses, cars driving by. He's sitting on the playground smoking a joint. Straight up. Dad's like, go tell Bob to put that thing out. Or go get in his car to do it. So I go over to Bob and I'm like, hey Bob, Dad says you got to put that thing out if you're going to be on school grounds. Bob goes, what? All kids smoke weed. I was like, this is a grade school. I'm pretty sure that none of them smoke weed. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, Bob, I'm pretty sure. Besides, it's illegal. You can't be on school grounds smoking weed. You can't be in public doing that. Save it for home. He's like, all right. So he nubs the joint and he sticks it in his shirt pocket, the roach, and he's like, I'll save the rest of it for later. Well, we go on about our business. Finish the day out. A very simple day. Nothing crazy happens. Nothing outlandish. We go home next weekend, go back. No Bob. We get there and go, where's Bob? Dad laughs. He goes, he was removed from this job. He's no longer allowed on property. I was like, why not? He's like, the school superintendent found him in the bathroom smoking a joint while he was giving a tour. So apparently the superintendent had brought some people over to give a tour of this remodel that they were having done, because they were redoing everything. They took out all the ceiling tiles and replaced them, new lights, new floors. They repainted all the halls. And this weekend was going to be the last weekend we were there. We were doing wrap-up, finishing off Cove Base and that kind of stuff. It's like, okay. He's like, you probably won't see Bob for a while. This really pissed the company off. They're cutting him back. All right, okay. Whatever. Well, 6 months pass. We're doing a courthouse up near Indianapolis. It's a 2-day job, 3-day job. It's not a very big job. Or it's a new courthouse they just built, and there was half a dozen rooms, and judges' chambers that needed carpet and base. So, once again, my thing. Go in, sand everything. I'll let the glue down. Dad and Bob takes care of putting the carpet in. Well, lunchtime rolls around. Dad tells me to go find Bob. Now, Dad had already looked for Bob, where he was supposed to be. So, I start on the first floor, which is what we'd already done. I looped the whole first floor. I asked the tile cutters that are down there, putting in the ceramic tile, marble, I guess technically, it's marble tile, there in the entryway. I asked them if they'd seen the big burly guy that looked like he might want to whoop your ass. Alright, we ain't seen him since y'all got here. Alright. So I go up, I make the loop on the second floor. I go to check all the doors that I can open. Nothing. I hit the third floor. And I can hear something, but I don't know what it is. And the third floor is someplace that we weren't doing anything in. Or at least not this weekend, or this day. So I go wandering around, and apparently they'd already been there and done this floor, because it had fresh carpet on everything. You could smell it. And I keep hearing this noise, and I don't know what it is. And I end up in a courtroom, and I follow the noise through the courtroom, which doesn't have anything in it yet except for the divider and the judge's podium or whatever the hell they call that, and all the carpet. So I go to the judge's podium, and it keeps getting louder and louder and louder. And about the time I get there, I realize what I'm hearing is giggling. I was like, the hell's that? So I get up on the judge's podium, and it's got a false wall behind it. It's a door. So I push it, and it swings open. There's Bob sitting in the judge's chamber, smoking a joint, laughing his ass off like it's the funniest thing he's ever done. I was like, Bob, put that out, we're going to lunch. He's like, you didn't tell nobody I was back here, did you? I was like, Bob, I didn't know you were back here until just now. Put the damn thing out. I don't want to go to jail today. Mind you, there's security on the first floor at all the entrances. So, Bob nudged it out, sticks it in his pocket. We go. We go to lunch. And it's only a block or two up the road. And it's a little sports cafe, bar style restaurant. They're not far. We walked. Bob drove his car. Which, by the way, Bob had a new Cadillac. It went from a blue one to a red one. Anyway, we go in. We walk over, sit down at a table. Waitress comes up, goes, what can I get you a drink? You know, me, Dad, Mountain Dew or Mellow Yellow or something. Bob goes, bring me 6 beers, and when I'm done with them, start bringing them to me one at a time. Lady goes, you sure? Bob's like, I said it, I meant it. Okay. So, they go and get Bob the 6 beers, and me and my father, whatever it was we ordered, drank. And Bob pounds down those first 6 beers in 15, 20 minutes. We get our food. It's burgers, typical bar food. Burgers, fries. By the time we're done, Bob has put down 10 or 11 beers. I was like, Bob, maybe you should have walked with us instead of driving your car. He's like, I'm fine. Bob pulls out, turns right, drives the 2 blocks up to the courthouse. We get there. He's sitting in this car, windows all tinted out. Dad's like, get him. I go over, knock on the window. I was like, come on, Bob, let's go. Bob was in the car, finishing that joint he was smoking in the judge's chamber. Now, none of this is why Bob is crazy. This is just Bob being Bob at this point. Where Bob starts to get weird is I had just graduated high school, so I'd been 18, 19, what did I say? Might have been 19. Anyway, I had to start school a year late because my birthday fell right before the deadline or right after the deadline or whatever it was. So whatever everybody else graduates at, I was a year ahead or a year older. Anyway, we're working in Cincinnati at the UC dorms. Now, Bob likes to start work early. Dad likes to start work early. They both have this agreement. Oh, we're going to be pulling 10-hour days until this job's done. We start at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, we're going 6 to 4. I'm still doing the standing thing. I'm doing cut in with tile. They're showing me how to do cove base. I'm learning all the basics. I'm part of the floor layers unit as an apprentice now. And I was doing this so I got better pay. Because I had no intent of sticking with it. But that's neither here nor there. So, we work here. Bob's on his own floor. Dad's on his own floor. I'm on my own floor. I sand, and then I go to another floor and I sand the whole floor. I sand the hallways. I sand all the rooms, the closets. I sweep everything. I clean it up. I get the skid jack. I move the tile that's needed for that floor there. The glue for that floor. I move it there. Everything's moved. Ready. I can get 2 floors a day. They can lay 2 floors between those 2 and the others that were there and me. We can do 2 floors every 6 days. That's glue, set, tile, base, the whole shooting match. So every 3 days we can do 2 floors with the 2 crews working on the 2 separate floors. So it's a 14-story building, the one we're working at this point. And we get the first 8 floors done, and then they drop it down to just 3 of us, which is my father, Bob, and me. Now, lunchtime rolls around on Fridays, we go out to eat, or we go get food and bring it back. The rest of the week, you're eating out of your dinner bucket. So, Dad throws me the keys to the van. He says, go down to the local deli, get food. You know, what do you want? Tell me. So, we go. I go to the store. And it's 6-7 blocks up the road. And Bob was like, I want to go. I'm like, all right, Bob. You want to go. So, we jump in my dad's van. I'm driving. Bob's riding shotgun. We go up to the deli. There's a little deli. But it's a grocery store style thing. Convenience store style thing, I guess would be the better way to put it. Because there's chips and pop and stuff in the middle, and the back's the deli where they make sandwiches and hot food and whatnot. Which, by the way, they had good chili dogs. But anyway, we're in an aisle looking for some kind of weird chips that Bob had to have. He's like, I know they got them. I bought them here before. And all of a sudden, Bob hits the floor. I'm just standing there. I thought he was like having a stroke or something. I'm like, Bob, what the hell's wrong with you, okay? I'm looking at the ground. Bob's laying there on the floor all sprawled out. He grabs me by the waist. My belt. He reaches up and grabs me and yanks me to the floor. I was like, the hell are you doing, Bob? He's like, can't you smell them? I was like, what the hell am I supposed to be smelling, Bob? He's like, you can't smell them. And then he proceeds to use a derogatory term for a Vietnamese person. Which, in today's day and age, probably pisses a few people off. So, I was like, I can't smell anything, Bob, except for the deli back there. And this little old lady of Asian descent, I can't say that she was Vietnamese, she was Chinese or Japanese, I don't know. Comes strolling around the corner, Bob seen her, and he jumped up into a dead sprint and was out the front door. I didn't see Bob, he's gone. I go back to the deli, guys, called our number, said our food was ready. I go back here and get the food. I grabbed the chips that my dad and I wanted, and I happened to find the chips that Bob wanted on my way out, and I grabbed those, and I go up to the counter, I pay for everything, and I go out to the van, no Bob. No Bob anywhere. I load the van up, I drive back to the college campus, I go to the dorms that we're working on, I walk in, there sits Dad and Bob. Bob is out of breath and panting. And my dad goes, what the hell happened? I was like, there was a little old lady that Bob thought smelled funny, and he took off running out the front door. And I didn't see him until I got here. Well, Bob proceeds to tell my dad that what happened and what he smelled, and it triggered him. Well, Bob's a bit odd, but okay, so we'll deal with that. About a week and a half later, Bob comes to work one day. He walks up to my dad. He's like, you got a set of pliers I can borrow? Dad digs a pair out. Bob looks at me. He's like, you got anything cleaner? Dad digs another pair out. Bob looks at me. He's like, those might work. Bob goes off. He pulls out a blowtorch and a can of industrial floor cleaner that's used for removing glue. He wipes these things down with that industrial cleaner, which is extremely flammable. It smells like acetone, but burns like rocket fuel. It's mean stuff, whatever it is. I don't remember what it was called. But Bob cleans these pliers, and then he takes that blowtorch and hits them. Lights them on fire. He's sitting there just roasting these pliers with the blowtorch, and flames shooting everywhere. Then he shakes it out, and he waves it around for 2 or 3 minutes. And then when he hunkers down, does this squat thing, and he's got his back to us, and all of a sudden he pops up, and you hear the pliers hit the floor, and he screams, you ain't gonna hurt me no more, you son of a bitch, and stomped it. This goofy bastard ripped out one of his own teeth that was making him have pain. I was like, Bob, what the hell are you doing? It's like that tooth was bothering me. I don't want nothing to do with it. I was like, shouldn't you go to the dentist? He's like, I did it myself. Bob. Bob was great. When Bob wasn't being nutty. So, this same job site, Bob would vanish. Couldn't find Bob. You go to all 14 floors. Wouldn't find Bob. You go outside, look up at the balconies, you could find Bob. He would go out and he would tuck in the little cubby corners on the balconies where you couldn't see him. He would smoke a joint. So you'd have to find Bob this way if you needed him for something. You'd have to go outside, walk halfway across the parking lot, look up until you could see Bob. Then you could count the floors, figure out where he was. Bob got more done than most guys who are sober by himself. So, nobody ever complained about his behavior because he was fast and he was good. But it made an interesting day to work with somebody like him. So, about 2 weeks before the job's done, we got down to where we got 1 or 2 floors left with the 3 of us. We brought in an extra person to come back and do the cove base that we hadn't got done yet. And Bob, doing Bob's thing. You know, like I said, we're 2 or 3 weeks away from getting done. And we have till, I want to say it was September the 12th or something. It was whenever the school was going to open back up. We had to have it done by then. And we were ahead of schedule by that deadline. But anyway, we're in late July, early August. And we're starting to wrap things up. We're down to the last couple floors. Last floor or 2. And Bob doesn't show up for work on a Monday. Which is really weird for Bob, because Bob always shows up for work. Bob loves his money. Bob wasn't happy unless he was working 60, 70 hours a week, so he could get him another Cadillac every couple of years and that kind of stuff. Anyway, Bob doesn't show up for work on Monday. He ain't there on Tuesday. Wednesday, he finally shows up. I don't know where he's been. Dad hasn't heard where he's been. So Bob walks in. I was like, where have you been, Bob? He's like, I was in jail. I was like, for what? Did you get caught smoking in public or something? No. My wife stabbed me and then I threatened to kill her. I was like, she stabbed you and you went to jail? He's like, well, there was more to it than that. I was like, well, how did you end up in jail? Well, starts out, his kid stole something and got caught. And he was yelling at the kid, and he had choke slammed him to the wall and was yelling at him. And she pulled a knife out and stabbed him in the shoulder. I don't remember which side. And he spun around and he knocked her down. And she started screaming, I'm going to kill you, and this and that and the other. And this is what Bob tells me anyway. I'm like, okay. And then she ran outside. And he's like, I chased her. And she jumped in her car. She tried to run over me, so I jumped on the hood. I'm like, okay. So far, not too bad. Then he put his face through the windshield intentionally. Headbutted the windshield until he put a hole in it. And he started screaming at her, and then he tried to grab her. And she swerved the car, and he fell off, and then she backed over top of him. She got away, called the cops. All the damage he had caused and chaos he had wrought was enough for them to put him in jail for 3 to 4 days until he got bail or got released on his own recognizance. I don't really know how that part played out. I'm like, Bob, did you learn anything? Nope. Nothing. So you're going to tell me you're going to do it again? It's like, if she acts stupid again, I will. He got run over by the car. He put his face through the windshield. He was a little cut up. He did have a little bit of a limp where she run him over with the car, supposedly. And that is just a drop in the bucket for Bob and Crazy. If you guys want to hear more Bob stories, I have a few more Bob stories that I can share with you. But that's it for now. This video has been going on far too long, I'm sure. I can't see the timer, so. Anyway, remember, if you ain't having fun, you aren't doing it right. Have a good night, y'all.